Welcome to Keep the Line Moving, the podcast where leadership meets life and inspiration. Here we spotlight extraordinary leaders. We're diving deep into how they inspire, motivate, and lead with strategy and empathy to achieve the extraordinary. Here we go. Episode 130 of the podcast, and the topic is giving back. Through the course of this podcast, over 2 years, we have had guests, hopefully, that have inspired you, told great stories. You can identify with them. They've given you something to take back into your workplace to make you better, or you've just been entertained. And that's great as well. Well, this guest will give you all of those. He'll be entertaining, inspiring, and he's a great storyteller. And he's my friend and former colleague at the New York Jets. His name, Tracy Belmear. He was the Senior Director of Business Development at the Jets from 2002 to 2022. But his career is so much more than that. And so is Tracy. Tracy's been at the Detroit Pistons, the New Jersey Nets, and currently he is the Vice President of Northeast Sales for Prodigy 911. He will explain his role and what he's learned throughout his career that he can share with us today. Speaking of learning, Tracy has taught at Columbia, he has taught at NYU, and his education is the following: a BA in political science, a master's in public administration, and he has a law degree. And I'll tell you why this is so important. After this podcast, I will tell you the major takeaways that Tracy told my class at NYU recently. He was a guest speaker. You're going to have to wait till the end, and I'll give you the takeaways. They are amazing. So is this conversation with my friend, Tracy Belmear. Tracy, first of all, how are you doing? You have a new gig relatively. How is that going? Let's start there. Tell us what you're doing.
So I'm working with a friend who I've been friends with for 30 some plus years, and I love dearly. And he has a business called 911 Direct. And what we make is we make consoles for mission critical communication centers. In other words, if you go into a 911 dispatch center, right, and you'll see that they have an array of computers and screens and things of that nature, we make the infrastructure and the furniture that those are on, right? And one of the things I like about it is not only is it, it gives me an opportunity to make a product that's in need and demand, but it's also a product that's very, very useful. I mean, these people out there are doing life-saving work. And if we could give them an opportunity to be comfortable when they're doing what they're doing, then, that's a plus. And it's just a great company, and I'm enjoying the heck out of it.
So let's go back in your career, because every time you have talked about previous stops in your career, you always dovetail into times in which you can help people, whether at Columbia or NYU, the New York Jets, the Detroit Pistons, and other stops that you've had. You have always worked in a way to find ways to help others. Why?
Because of my mom and dad, right? My mom and dad, Horace and Geraldine Belmear, were their mission in life was to help students become educated, become independent, and growing up in a state like West Virginia, where the educational levels are extremely low, and the poverty level is extremely high, that was something that they were getting people out of their circumstance, right, by just being their surrogate mom or dad and giving them the right advice. And I always saw that, and I always said, you know what? If I can do something where I'm impacting other people, then that's a win-win proposition. And that's something that I can lay my head down at night and feel good about.
As a co-worker, when you and I worked at the New York Jets for a number of years together, if I asked you a question, if you were walking by my office or I was walking by yours, and you would always make time, you would always stop what you were doing and you would make time. It was a series, and I call these, and I've learned this over the last few years, which are micro moments, meaning you don't have to have a grandiose, let's sit down and have a talk about mentoring or teaching. You did it in micro moments, small moments that were a minute and a half or 5 minutes. Tracy, you got a second? Of course, CG. You'd say it to me every time. How important is that to your previous point? Tell me your thought on that, please.
So, yeah, I mean, you should never be too busy to spend some time with someone. It's one of my favorite quotes is the Maya Angelou quote. And people will forget what you said, and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I've always wanted to make people feel like they make me feel, right? Or I want them to make me feel. When I would stop by your desk and your office, I knew that you had something very serious that you wanted to talk to me about. But at the end of it, we were going to be yucking it up like we always do, right? And we were
Yes.
going to, and it's like, like Jim Valvano said, if you can have a day where you're moved to cry, to move to smile, and move to laughter, that's a great day. And so no matter what happened, if I could figure out a way, or you could figure out a way to make me laugh, it just made everything better no matter what it was you were doing.
Oh, geez. You just dropped two amazing quotes on us. Maya Angelou about how you make people feel, and then Valvano about the emotions of human beings and let them out throughout the day. Laughter, crying, things of that nature. Let's just be honest. Professional sports is high ego, high intensity, high pressure. So, and I'll be personal here. When I would see you coming, it would put a smile on my face. So let's go back to the importance of that in the world of sports, not just in corporate or whatever folks are doing, but in the world of sports to kind of, hey, let's not, yes, it's serious. Yes, I get it. It's our profession and things of that nature, but let's just enjoy this.
We ain't curing cancer. Okay.
Yes.
We're in the entertainment business, right? So you need to be able to entertain and be entertained, right? So we're not curing cancer, and we're not solving the world's problems. However, the best way for me to deal with pressure was to get it out in the terms of making myself and other people laugh, right? Yeah. That's how I would relieve the pressure and the stress. Okay, is by, some people do it by, fighting and cursing and doing all kinds of crazy things, and that works for them, I guess. But me, it was just to make me laugh and to make other people's laugh, and let other people laugh, not taking light or not making light of the situation, but just figuring out a way of coping with it a little bit better. Laughter is a great stress reliever.
100%. And that does not, and I'm the same exact way, hence why we're friends, hence why we got along and get along so well. My philosophy mirrors yours exactly. That does not mean you can't get after it. That does not mean you can't do great, huge deals as you did throughout your entire sports career and what you're doing now at Prodigy. And that doesn't mean I can't have success just because I take myself a little lighter, right? And I enjoy laughter and making people smile and have joy. Joy, man. It's so powerful. Now,
Absolutely.
let's go through some of your successes. Tell us about when you got into the sports business. I love this story. It was the early 90s, and it's such a beautiful story how you got to the Detroit Pistons.
Yes. So coincidentally, I was living in Tallahassee, Florida, and working for Florida A&M University. And I was asked to come up to Saginaw, Michigan, to place some students on an internship at Dow Chemical and to talk to some students who were thinking about going to college. Went up to Saginaw and was there on a Friday, and that actually I didn't need to be there until Saturday. So I looked in the paper and I saw that the Detroit Pistons were playing a basketball game, right, against the Boston Celtics for that evening. And so I basically called up someone in their ticket sales office and bought a ticket, and decided to go to the game extremely early because I didn't have anything else to do. And so I went to the building and bought a game program, which I ended up ultimately selling ads in, and was leafing through it and saw that a gentleman named Will Robinson had gone to school with the same school as my mom and dad. So I went up to the concourse and went to a payphone and made a collect call. And that tells you how long ago that was. A collect call to my parents' house. And fortunately for me, my mom answered the phone and she accepted the charges. My dad probably wouldn't have accepted the charges. And so she accepted the charges. And I said to her, do you know this guy named Will Robinson? And she said, well, I know two Will Robinsons. Which one was it? I said, well, this one went to school with you guys, went to the same school as you guys. And she goes, oh, that Will Robinson. I go, yeah, that Will Robinson. I'm like, what's the tone there? And she said, well, I almost married him. I go, really? I go, yeah. She goes, yeah, I did. And so I said, oh, wow. Okay. And so she said, yes, I know him very well. So I went back to Tallahassee, Florida, and I called up Will Robinson and I said, hey, Will Robinson, I'm Tracy Belmear's son. And he goes, oh, you are Tracy Belmear. They used to call your mother the seventh wonder of the world. And so I said, listen, I'd like to talk to you about coming to work for the Detroit Pistons. So he said, sure, come on up. So then I had to drive I drove back up to Tallahassee, from Tallahassee, Florida to Detroit, Michigan. And when I walked into the Palace of Auburn Hills, all suit and tied up, to see Will Robinson according to the certain time and certain day, and they said, well, he's not here. So I said, well, where is he? Oh, it's okay. It's okay. He's just at Isaiah Thomas's basketball camp. So I drove out to Isaiah Thomas's basketball camp and met Will, and Will said, what can I do for you? And I said, well, I'm here to talk to you about coming to work for the Detroit Pistons. So he said, okay. So he said, well, let me see what I can do. And that was basically about it. After, planes, again, about a 15-hour drive all in, that was about, I had about 15, 20 minutes of his time. And I got a call a couple weeks later from a guy named Rex Nelson, who asked me to meet him in Atlanta because they were playing the Atlanta Hawks. And he offered me an internship, an unpaid internship. And so my initial instinct was to tell him, and I did, I can't leave Florida, because I had bought white leather furniture and a car with a sunroof and air conditioning. And then, I couldn't afford to leave and for an unpaid internship to drive up to Detroit. And so my mom, again, the wise person that she was, says to me, she goes, well, why did you tell him no? I go, well, because I can't afford to do that. And she goes, okay, listen, I'll make you a deal, right? I know that you're going to get an internship you're going to get a job after the internship is over. She said, I'll pay your expenses, your rent, and send you some money for food and things of that nature while you're doing this. And then after about 9 months, the internship was over. I got offered a job in their group sales department and started working and getting a salary, albeit small. And so, yeah, that was what started my career. And then I remember another point, that's a valuable lesson to people that get in this industry. The head of the department came to me and said, hey, listen, I want to promote you to our corporate sales group. So I said, okay, what does that mean? He goes, well, I'm going to give you a salary of $25,000 a year. And, that's going to be it. I go, well, geez, here we go again with the price cuts, paying me less than what I'm making. So again, I called my mom up and she goes, listen, I know that he's offering you less money, but these things have a tendency to work out. And she said, but more importantly, if you turn him down, they'll think that you're not ambitious, right? That you have no drive, no incentive, no get up and go itness, which is, I'm not a word, but that's what she said. And so
it works for us though, right?
Yeah, it works, right? And so I said, okay. So I went to him, I said, yeah, I'll take it. And so I ended up taking it.
Tracy, that is a tremendous story. The support from your parents, your gumption, right, to keep going. Yes, you did have tremendous support from your mom and dad, of course.
Yeah.
But you still kept going and succeeded and then built upon that and kept succeeding. So I will ask you, I have had the fortune of speaking at your NYU class, right, to your graduate students. And the way you engage with your students is very similar to right now, right? It's storytelling. It's telling them, value the relationships, you sound like me. And yes, I have to be honest with us, Tracy. We do sound a little bit old when we say put the device down. I say it all the time. I get it. But a DM and a text is just not as good as relating with folks. Whatever. Everyone can have their own opinion on it. Tracy, how would you convey messages, valuable messages, above and aside from the lesson plan per se, but giving them like wisdom so they can go succeed, whether at Columbia University or NYU or other places where you've taught?
Relating it to a story, right?
Yep.
Telling a story with a moral to it, for lack of a better way of putting it. Because you can tell people that be careful of the people that you see on your way up because they're the same people that you're going to see on the way down. But if you give them an example of how it occurred and how it benefited you to treat them with respect and treat them with love and kindness and humanity, I think it resonates more. One of the most valuable stories I ever met was from a guy that was an usher at the Palace of Auburn Hills. Right, he ended up buying one of my first big sales, which was a suite and at the Palace of Auburn Hills, and he, nobody thought that he was anything, right? But I knew that he liked the Grateful Dead, and I knew he liked Jimmy Buffett, and so when those guys would come into town, I would make sure that he got good seats. And it turned out, unbeknownst to anybody, he had won the lottery in Michigan and was worth like $50 million.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. So, so when he came down to talk about buying the suite from me, everybody was like, why are you wasting your time with this guy? And it turned out he could definitely afford it. And he did. And he bought it. And it like gave me a name and gave me the confidence to sell big ticket items. The crazy part about this was that me and my wife, who's now my ex-wife, were boarding a cruise ship in San Juan, Puerto Rico, to go get married in Barbados. And as we're walking up the plank to get on the boat, who do I run into? Richard, the same guy that bought this suite from me. So he ended up being the best man at my wedding. See, but if I had not said, okay, regardless of what this dude appears to do, that's what he is. That's not who he is. Right? You never, ever, ever know.
Tracy, exactly. Kindness is so powerful.
Yeah.
And being just aware of your surroundings, like who is the usher, right? Or who is the person that puts the food, in the cafeteria. All these people matter. They don't just matter to the overall business, they matter as humans.
Yes.
And Tracy, can I tell you a funny little story? I'm going to tell you a funny little story. And I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast, but it's just kind of to that point. So a couple of springs ago, while I was teaching at NYU, I met somebody for coffee, and it was a spring day. It was a beautiful day, and I was walking down, I think, University Ave there. And I put my phone down on purpose. I just said, I'm just going to enjoy the sun. This is great. It had been a harsh winter. And I'm walking, and then this gentleman with this gigantic smile is walking towards me. Now, there's a lot of people on the streets of New York. You know that.
Yes.
He's walking at me. He's got this beautiful smile. And the eye contact, he's looking right at me. Do you know who that was? It was Deepak Chopra. And I said the following. You're going to laugh, but you know me well. And I go, Deepak, what's going on?
Yeah, that's you.
I swear to
that's
you.
That's you. That's the CG we all know and love. That's not Chris Gargano. That's CG.
You're making me cry here. Anyway, so we had this exchange like we'd known each other for 50 years. We had this beautiful exchange. It was just all about paying attention to everyone. Now, the usher or Deepak or some individual that may need a little smile from you is all part of that openness and that kindness. Yes. Right, Tracy?
Yes, absolutely. You had your Deepak Chopra story. Mine was, another icon. We used to have this thing called Fight Night at the Palace, right? The Palace of Auburn Hills is where the Detroit Pistons played and where I worked. And on this one particular fight night at the Palace, one friend of mine named Glenn Miller, who worked with me, said, "Hey, I want you to come downstairs. There's somebody here I want you to meet." Right? So I go downstairs, and it's Muhammad Ali. Yeah. Right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm watching, and I noticed something, right? That when he was around adults, okay, he would have the shakes and his speech was extremely slurred, and it would pain me, right? Because I remember him, beating Joe Frazier and the press conferences and things of that nature growing up. But then I've noticed that when kids were around, all of a sudden the shaking stopped. He started doing magic tricks. And so I was like, "Champ, what's going on? How you do that?" He goes, "I save myself for those who need me, not for those who want me." That's a true story. And I think about it now, like I get chills thinking about it because that was literally what he was doing. And you know, if we go through our life only dealing with the people who want us and not the people who need us, then we were really not living. If you go through life only doing things for people that can do something for you, then you're not going to live a good life.
When I announced that I was going to start this business, somebody took me to dinner and explained to me taxes, LLC versus whatever the heck, I don't even remember. Getting clients and following up with clients. What type of clients? Do you remember that dinner you took me to? Do you remember that in Morristown, New
Yes,
Jersey?
I do. I do. I remember that dinner.
I still
Yeah.
have the notes in my phone. I was taking, remember, I was like crazily taking notes as you and I were talking.
Because it and you know, it was the lessons that I had learned the hard way, right?
Yeah.
So if I could build that bridge, that's another poem, but I it was significantly longer and I don't remember it all that well. But the bridge builder, the benefit of it is you know, if I can make something smoother for something else, for somebody else, right? Then at some point somebody is going to build a at some point obviously somebody's going to have built a bridge for me.
Tell me your most memorable story of the 20 years that you spent from '02 to 22 at the New York Jets.
Oh, geez. Memorable and valuable. So when I
Please.
first got to the New York Jets, I was given a list of accounts and things and one of the responsibilities that they asked me to do was to build their business with CPG goods, right? Consumer packaged goods. Okay. So I just dug in and one of the companies that I went after was a company called Premio Sausages. Okay. And the gentleman who was in charge of sales and marketing for Premio Sausages was a guy named Pete Telesco. And I called Pete probably 30 times. 30. Hey, this is Tracy Belmear from the New York Jets, and I'd like to see if I can help you with your business. Right? That was my standard line. And he never got back to me. So I convinced my boss at the time to let me go to the Chicago Food Show. So I'm walking up and down, you know, and I broke it up in a couple of days because it took you a couple of days to get through everybody and talk to everybody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So on the last day, I'm finally to the P's and the latter part of the alphabet, and I see Premio Sausage has a display. So I walk up to this display and I said, do you guys know who Pete Telesco is? And this guy goes, yeah, I know who he is. I go, is he here? He goes, yeah, he's here. Who's asking? And I go, Tracy Belmear from the New York Jets. He goes, oh, you, right? So I go, what do you mean? Oh, you. He goes, I'm Pete Telesco. And why do you keep bugging me? And I'm like, well, wait a minute, Pete. Why don't you just return a phone call? That's the easiest way to get rid of me is to call me up and tell me, stop calling me, right? He said, no, I'm not doing that. And I go, well, why won't you talk to me? He goes, because you keep telling me you're going to help me with my business. You know nothing about my business. I go, oh, wow. You know nothing about how I make sausage. You know nothing about how I sell sausage to my ultimate consumer, which is not who you think it is, right? So I said, okay, Pete, how can I learn about that? He said, well, come by the factory and I'll show you how we make sausage, which, by the way, you don't want to go do because you'll never eat sausage again. and then we'll talk about how you go about doing the business. And he said, you know, young man, it will not only will it help you with premium sausages, but will help you with the CPG business overall. I said, okay. And the long story short, you know, signed up Pete with it for the official sausage of the New York Jets. Thus, I became known as the sausage boy around the office. And now I believe Pete and Premio Sausages are entering their 15th or 16th year with not only the New York Jets, but the New York Giants, the New York Yankees, the New York Mets, the Devils, the Rangers, the Knicks, and the stadium, right? So they are the exclusive Italian sausage of all those entities. And it all started because of that conversation that Pete and I had at the Chicago Trade Show.
Can I assume that one of the takeaways you had as a young seller, right, a young person in the space, was that the modifying or perhaps being more pointed in your those 30 reach out telephone calls, like, you know what I mean? Like, rather than me assuming here, why don't we what is your number one takeaway from that?
So eliminate this whole cold call phenomenon. There's no such thing as a cold call, right? If you do some research, you turn a cold call into a warm call.
Mhm.
That's number one. Number two is, as another one of my mom's sayings, it's better to keep your mouth closed and have people think you're a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
That's really good.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
So, no matter how smart you might think you are, you're not that smart. You're not the smartest person in the room. It's being self-deprecating is a good thing. First of all, it keeps you humble. That's number one. Number two, you're not perfect. So why not be self-deprecating? And number three, you'll find that, sales is a Broadway play put on by psychiatrists. If you act self-deprecating, people will want to help you. People will tell you, this is what you can sell me.
I want to talk about the concept here that you've introduced to this conversation, self-deprecation. How valuable it is. It's not being unnecessarily humble. It's an extension of humility. It's being able to laugh at yourself. This is hard. Life is hard. We make mistakes. We make them hourly. We make them, I could have said this. I wish I said that. We all go through that. So being self-deprecating, like you said, brings people into you, right? And you could be self-deprecating. You got like 19 degrees. How many degrees do you have, my friend? I said it in the intro, but I want you to say it.
I have three. I have a bachelor's in political science, a master's in public administration, and a doctorate of jurisprudence, which is a law degree.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to get you going. I know you well, but I want your answer to this. Why do smart people, successful people, not equate the advantage of being self-deprecating?
Probably because their ego won't allow them to do that, right?
Right,
Even though it's in their best interest,
right.
particularly if you're in sports or if you're in sports sales. I think that self-deprecation. Well, first of all, I don't think that I'm the cat's meow, right?
Right.
So therefore, I don't act like I'm the cat's meow. But I've also figured out over the years that being self-deprecating and being humble helps me to do what I need to do to sell what I need to sell.
So it's
So
a
I will,
strategy in essence. Yeah.
huh?
It's a strategy.
Strategy, absolutely. So, not in the essence, it is a strategy. You're right. To your point, absolutely, it's a strategy. Like I said, sales is a Broadway play put on by psychiatrists. It's not my line, but I've incorporated it and I use it all the time. And again, it goes back to what Maya Angelou said, right? They'll forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And the way that I have, because of the lesson I learned from the premium sausages of the world, was that I wanted people to to feel like an interaction with me was valuable to them. If nothing else, I stroked their ego, right? By being self-deprecating, making them feel better, making them say, okay, yeah, let me educate this young man who's left-handed and from West Virginia.
But it's also authentic, Tracy. You can't fake that stuff.
No, you can't. You can't. But it's got to come from a real place.
Right.
It's got to come from a real place. Like, little subtle things. Like, when people call me Mr. Belmear, I go, no, 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 that's my father.
Right.
Or I'm not real big on my students calling me Professor Belmear. Just call me Tracy. You know, being and that makes them more comfortable talking to me. It's like you're taking that power and that hierarchy out of the equation and just relating to people on an interpersonal level, right? When you have power and you have hierarchy, it always puts someone at a disadvantage and another person at an advantage. And most of the time, that advantage is superficial and it's not real. Just like them being at a disadvantage is not real.
That's what I so appreciate about you and the way you do business and lead your life, my friend.
That's why we're friends, CG.
That is correct.
Yeah, because I recognize in you the same things I see in me.
Tracy, now we're going to do the all-star moments. First thought, best thought.
Okay.
You,
Woo, okay.
you look scared.
I am.
Go.
All right.
We will get to all-star moments in just a second. To grow as a leader, you must make intentional choices about how you want to show up for yourself and your team. Are you ready to grow your leadership? The Gargano Leadership Group offers expert coaching, consulting, and workshops rooted in our 4 leadership pillars: curiosity, alignment, optimism, and self-awareness. Leadership starts with forging authentic connections, communicating your values, leading with energy and enthusiasm, and truly understanding yourself. Visit garganoleadership.com to get started with us today. Back to the show. Best Piston player of that era, the bad boy era.
Joe Dumars.
The best Jet you ever met, player-wise, and the best Jet player in the history of the New York Jets.
They're one and the same. Curtis Martin.
Best quarterback in the NFL of all time.
Well, yeah, Tom Brady. I can't really say anything else.
Okay, how about number 2? Yeah, we can't really argue.
Number 2 would probably be, in my opinion, Terry Bradshaw.
Adversity. How do you deal with adversity?
By remembering the lessons that my mom taught me.
All right, 2 more, Tracy, then we'll call it a day.
Okay.
You've done a lot of hiring throughout your career.
Mm-hmm.
What do you look for in an ideal candidate, somebody you want to join the team?
Somebody that I want to work with. Yeah. If I get the impression I don't want to work with you, it's going to be very difficult, no matter how qualified or intelligent or experienced you may be. At the end of the day, it comes down to that teamwork concept, right? Especially when you're working long hours and you've got a lot of pressure like you do in sports.
All right, I'm looking forward to this one. Last one. Describe yourself as a leader in 1 sentence.
A follower.
That's
To
interesting.
lead, you got to be able to follow. Leaders lead, but you got to be able to follow as well. You got to be able to follow your heart, follow your mind, follow advice. And I don't mean follow a person, right? I mean follow those kinds of things, right? Follow what you know is right and wrong. Follow what you think might be gray, but figure out if it's black or white. Follow the path that others have laid for you, the bridge builder. Follow the things that other people have done, right? So to be a leader, you got to be a follower.
Tracy, this has been fantastic. I have enjoyed the heck out of this.
Thank you, CG, for having me. I appreciate you.
Okay, I promised you those takeaways from when Tracy spoke to my organizations in sports class at NYU this spring. Number 1, don't just check in with people. Care about them. Meaning, it doesn't matter what level you are, whether you're an intern, a first-year professional, or you start to get seasoned in your career, you're a leader. Listen to them. Care about their answers when you're talking to them. Don't just go through the motions. And I could say Tracy dialed in on this topic. He always cared and always listened and still does. Very good advice. Number 2, I love this quote, and so does Tracy. He shared it with the class, and we had a great conversation about it. He said the following: people you see on the way up are the same people you will see on your way down. I think Ray Kroc of McDonald's said that. Right now, let's just discuss the premise that Tracy shared. Be kind, be authentic, because as you go up in your career, invariably all of us will have a rocky road and need a reference of some sort. And Tracy emphasized, be authentic, and the same with everyone. And number 3, this was a great one from Tracy that he shared with the students. He said, if you're trying to figure out what your skills are and how you come across, self-awareness as a professional, Tracy said, simply ask your parents, ask your friends, people you care about, how do I come across? How do I communicate? How do I make you feel when you're in my presence? And Tracy said, they'll give you the answer. People that care about you will tell you how you come across. They're a great resource, right? And then one of the students said, I remember this clearly. He asked the question, how often do we do this? When do we do this? And Tracy said calmly, we do this until you die, meaning that this self-reflection and getting input from people that care about us is an ongoing process. Great wisdom from Tracy Belmear, and we thank him very much for speaking to my class as well as being a guest on this podcast today. Hope you enjoyed it, everybody. Have a great week. I enjoy you for being part of this listener group each and every week. Recommend the podcast. You know we appreciate it. Recommend it to somebody who you think needs it. In fact, let's just do that this week. Take this episode, get the link, and send it to somebody who doesn't think inclusively or doesn't think in a way that you agree with. Just send it to them. Let's just try that. Have a great week. Thank you. See you next time on Keep the Line Moving. Thanks for tuning in to Keep the Line Moving. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Most importantly, share this podcast with your friends, family, and coworkers. It means the world to us. If you have a guest recommendation, visit our website at garganoleadership.com, where you'll also find all our archived episodes. For our marketing coordinator and the producer of this podcast, Savin Narwhal, I'm Chris Gargano. Have a fantastic week, everybody.